and welcome to TableTakes, presented by Gen Con. I am here today with Banzai, Derek. As you can see, Christian is not here, but we do have very special guests, Hawke Robinson, back for another show. This is your third show that you've been on
Third
here?
one,
Yeah,
thank
third.
you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us again.
Gladly.
First third-timer, I believe.
Yep.
First
Yes,
person we've had
first that we had.
You're going to
Another
become a
first.
regular.
A regular.
He's got a
Yeah.
high score.
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, for the rest of our guests, you're going to have to up your
your game,
skills.
yeah.
Up your game. Yeah.
your
I
game.
feel like we need like an HWK just to appear on the screen and scroll up.
Make
All
it
the
so.
guests, make it a competition, make it a
takes me
game,
back.
right?
Yes.
All right, let's dive right into the headlines today. First up, we have criticism about LGBTQ representation in magic novels. So you might have heard about this. It's been going on for about a week now,
Yes.
maybe like a week and a half that this exploded. So what happened is a recent Magic the Gathering novel. First of all, there are Magic the Gathering novels. You might not be aware, but
Yes.
there is a whole media behemoth.
I think at this point you kind of have to search for IP properties that don't have magic
Yeah.
or don't have novel lines tied into them.
Yeah, and to set the stage, we've talked a lot on the show about how Wizards in particular is pushing the media. They're pushing the planeswalkers, they're pushing the characters. They want you to live in their world, and the more you live in their world, the better it is because you're going to buy their stuff. So it's
Yeah.
very
And
good
then more
for
we'll
business.
care about those super dramatic cinematic trailers where
my
Liliana's
gosh.
looking off and then the music and the dying.
The feels, the more
The
they just want you to
feels.
have just the feeliest of feels.
Yes.
So they made a misstep in their recent novel. This was for Were the Spark Forsaken, dropped on November 5th, and was quickly met with backlash. So in these novels, there's a lot of characters, and there's a lot of interpersonal drama, there's relationships forming and breaking between all of the characters. And this novel in particular, I think I'm just going to read a little bit of the excerpt. So
Oh boy.
Oh.
just a little bit of it.
Do you want to give some primer
Yeah,
on the
sure.
characters involved
So
first?
characters, Chandra, best planeswalker, fire lady, incredibly emotional and passionate, and just runs into any situation, sets everything on fire. Very much my spirit planeswalker.
Wow.
Nissa, also fine, cares about trees and stuff. So
Yep.
I guess that's
she's
cool.
an elf or whatever. Who
Yeah,
cares?
she's an elf or whatever, yeah. Not as much flavor. But anyways, for about a decade now, according to the fans, these two, there's been some shipping involved with a little will they, won't they, a lot of scenes where they're kind of playing around with making a more intimate relationship with them. A lot of, because Chandra is so fiery but afraid to be vulnerable,
And
Nissa
because
has
Nis
been
has
there.
no personality or anything like that, they're a perfect mix. Is that what you're telling me?
No,
no.
Nissa is a nurturer. So Nissa would, but also a nurturer, but uncomfortable getting too close to people. So Nissa would talk to Chandra. They were clearly forming a very strong friendship, if not a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, in this most recent novel, I'm just going to dive into it. Chandra had never been into girls. Her crushes, and she had her fair share, were mostly the brawny and decidedly male types like Gids. And Gids, for those of you who don't know, is Gideon, who is another
Nobody likes Kitty.
planeswalker who nobody likes.
Who's very
White
bro.
mana color, very, bro,
Bro.
Chad.
The white doesn't help. White
I
doesn't
know,
help.
No.
I know.
Well-
Just, yeah. So there's just so much wrong with this.
Yeah.
And first and foremost, most importantly, is the LGBTQ population is a huge part of Magic's culture, and we've seen this a lot in a lot of the recent conversations.
they've gotten a lot of praise.
Yes.
They've had trans characters. They've had characters that are explicitly queer of some kind or another.
Yeah.
So it is quite a surprise, even for somebody on the outside who's not immersed in a lot of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
To see Wizards take this step with that character.
Yeah.
And until you read the excerpt, I thought it was just like, oh well, they didn't like consummate it, or like
Right.
they hinted that she might be going some other direction.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, no, that door is shut.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was never open. It was just your imagination.
Yeah.
It seems real weird.
Just to kill it like that.
Yeah, just to kill. I mean, for a lot of these, it's writing off like a lot of like, especially in the LGBT community, who were more like pansexual or bisexual, really looked up to this character, and to essentially have her sexuality be written off in a short paragraph, just be like, It was a phase.
JK.
It was a phase.
Yeah.
That's essentially what the bigger problem was when I was like looking into this.
Yep.
Is that they basically, yes, they are fictional characters, but a lot of people put emotional value in these characters and place themselves in their own, like, you know.
Well, as is said very often recently,
Yes.
representation matters.
Representation
So
matters.
people were very excited. A lot of people really love and identify with Chandra.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
when this happened, there was a great deal of uproar. And how did Wizards respond?
So they did apologize.
Yes.
They recently did a post about, we did a bad, we didn't live up to the expectations created for Chandra and what she means to our fans. We apologize. The characters belong as much to the fans as to the people who create them. So I think that is a reasonable response. I think the big thing about this is, you might not know, but for a lot of these IP novels, you don't have the author who you look up to who
It's
owns
like comic
it.
books
Yeah.
or movies, things like that.
So you have rotating authors, and but you would think that it's very important for the company to preserve their brand, and you'd be very careful and edit these very closely. But this says, you know, maybe they were kind of churning these out a little bit and weren't paying as close attention, or they saw it and they were just like, oh, I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, and part of it is like, for me personally, like you had mentioned a little bit about the writing off the sexuality. Like, it's also just gross as a woman to say things like this. Like, I've never looked at a dude and been like, he's decidedly male. Not like kind of male, but like decidedly male. Yeah, I'm into that. The muscles.
I don't know. That just made me giggle
Right?
just thinking like, hey, like all girls hanging out. Like, do you think
How male is he?
how male? I don't know. I was saying
50%?
On a scale of no to yes, how male?
No, on a scale of no to Chris Hemsworth, right? Like, that's how we talk about.
yeah, that's what girls talk. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah,
No.
sure.
No. Taking down notes.
Taking all the
Yeah, so
Yeah.
couple, like, just bad writing, I think. And never kill a ship, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
never kill
really
a
won't
ship.
Take forever.
I
Right?
think
just like,
Nope. No, well, I mean, maybe this is why I'm not in charge of $1 million multimedia IPs,
Yeah.
but I am very much of the opinion of, like, yeah, resolve it and, like, ship them and then move on.
yeah. But then you,
Characters develop, characters change.
you almost
You don't
ship
want
them.
30 years of will they or won't they, or you get the X-Files.
yeah.
Everybody loved, but then we went to go see the X-Files movie, and we were like, are you kidding me? They're still doing this?
But you went to see it. You keep going to see it because you never know when.
No, I
Yeah,
they-
it's the anticipation.
No.
Yeah.
At that point, it was like, hey,
tease.
fine, maybe I'll just come back when they figured it out.
Yeah. No.
Call me when you're done.
I
But
suppose, but that's different from, that's resolving a ship. That's not killing a ship.
Yes,
because you can
sure.
always come back and be like, oh, now they broke up, and now there's the option for this other person.
Sure.
I'm just gonna put a little bone into this argument, or how do you say it? Like, throw a bone.
Throw your hat in the ring.
Throw your hat in the ring with something.
Put a bone
With
in the argument.
no, but I mean, I was gonna say maybe because this is a fairly new author to this series. Like, he's only done one other book
Sure.
beforehand, so he
They didn't
probably they didn't know.
Well, you sure, but like, I mean, to Emma's point, you know, then that puts the burden of responsibility is still on Wizards
Yeah.
to maintain it. Like, it's not like the idea that multiple authors and a huge stable of authors rotating through characters and
Yeah.
maintaining some consistency, that's not new or unique to the Magic novels. You know, there's tons, again, it's kind of hard to not find a property that has 1 million tie-in novels at this point.
Yeah.
Comic books have done it, movie series have done it. Not all of them have always done it successfully, but still, like, it you know, this is just another, you need to have that core kind of editing management, like, brand team who
Yeah.
reviews these things and says, you know, that's not how our Chandra would have described
That's
it.
not the
Yeah.
voice we want. That's not
Yeah.
a style
Yeah.
guide,
Chandra would
et
never
cetera,
say
you
that
know.
she wants the decidedly masculine guys.
Yeah, and
Like,
this dude's been writing for years, so like decades at this point. Like, you can still write different sexualities and different genders respectfully. Whether you should be able to do that without overview.
Well, so
But yeah.
Yeah.
I could talk about this forever, but we should probably move on. I believe Banzai has some news about like something really cool for Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Yes, for 5th edition, Unearthed Arcana just released. People have been excited. Some people maybe not everyone, been excited about the new Psionic options that they have. Psionic options that they have listed. So this kind of harkens back to the Mystic class 2 years ago.
Which was way broken. I played a Mystic, way broken.
Oh
In a
yeah,
good
so
way.
a lot of people had that comment that basically it was just like too muddied up. You can't just like squish all of this into one thing.
I think that like the short end. We were playing Curse of Strahd, and there's some Mystic ability that's like allows you to find a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
and
right?
We were like, so just show us this coffin. So in the very beginning of the game, we just like rappelled down the cliff, went into the coffin. We're like, cool, end of game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the GM
Yeah.
was like,
It's kind of broken. Or
That's pretty messed
broken,
up.
yeah. But
it was fun to play.
Yeah, but they're taking a different route. Like as we talked about a few weeks before, about all the psychic abilities being a subclass. This is now 3 new subclasses that you can play with.
Because I think the previous subclass was a sorcerer.
Yes,
subclass.
the sorcerers. So it basically added more spells for sorcerers. This one has Psychic Warrior is one of the 3 classes, which basically uses your psychic ability to buff your character
It's
in
like
a
an
battle.
Eldritch Knight or Paladin kind of
Yes,
thing.
a paladin or unreal, a knight. The other one is the rogue class called the Soul Knife, which basically you can conjure up a blade that helps you, a psychic blade.
That's been ever since it was introduced in
Soul
3rd
Knife.
edition.
Yeah.
Everybody has loved playing I'm the rogue, the assassin who just like you're just playing Psylocke. Is what you're doing. And everybody wants to play Psylocke.
All the Psylocke.
Probably other than Psylocke.
Turn in all your weapons. Sure.
Yeah.
No problem.
And lastly, the 3rd class is a wizard class of Psionics, which is like an arcane. It adds more spells. You can be in a psychic bubble and then do stuff in the psychic bubble.
Wow.
That's fun. That sounds exciting right there.
Yeah.
No. I
You
am.
seem underwhelmed.
I am.
I know,
I
right?
am very much of the opinion that making Psionics just a reskin of spells is the most boring way to go about this. Like the Arcana Unearthed, ironically enough, actually did that, but I felt it was okay because they did it from the very beginning. They had a couple classes, separate classes that were very focused around it, but like it was. I mean, it was okay, but like to me, if you're gonna call it Psionics, then just make it different.
Yeah.
Like the whole point of Psionics is it's not magic.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like you're just casting a spell and not talking.
I-
So like,
I think it's just easier for people to digest
Sure.
in some ways.
okay,
That's
but guess what?
my
Not all parts of 5th edition need to be easy to digest.
How dare you?
Like maybe we could have some rules that are complicated and a little more engaging.
For those who like more
Yeah,
complicated
like
systems. Sure.
that's part of I think the big change from 4th edition to 5th edition is they went from the idea, I mean aside from the system overall, but they went from the idea of all classes are the same level of engagement back to the more traditional some classes are easier to engage with than others. So even just look at the core like there are certain builds of fighter that are way easier to deal with than wizard.
Yes.
So if you want to play a pretty straightforward character and you're learning the ropes, you play the Great Weapon Fighter or whatever it is. Like I can't remember what Great Champion or something like that.
Human fighter.
Yeah, that one,
Yeah.
which is super boring.
Progress.
Yeah.
So then maybe
complexity.
eventually you end up as the wizard, and every day you're learning new stuff. Like different players want different things, and I feel like Psionics should be the same way. Like you don't want to learn Psionics; it's too complicated.
Well, then
Don't play a Psionicist. Like that's okay.
So
All the way back to
you
first
prefer you prefer it to be like for my understanding 2nd edition where they did have a separate book containing psionics that you could play.
I don't know if I'm legally capable of ever saying I prefer something in 2nd edition. But the general approach of like it should be a different thing. Like to
Yes.
me, if you're going to call it psionics, then make it different.
Right.
If you want to have a soul knife that's just using spells, like fine, but like why call it psionics if it's just going to be spells? That's just magic.
I will say, I wonder what the people at Wizards who develop Dungeons and Dragons, what kind of position they're in now, because they want to keep making stuff. You
Yes.
keep people employed to make cool new stuff, but it's like do we make another edition at some point? And that's so scary,
Well,
but
they
we
already
want to.
fired that warning shot off just a few weeks ago. Didn't
Yep.
they? Somebody discussed that they're already working on the planning stage for the next edition.
Yeah.
Because they were talking about the average release cycle.
There would not be a
for
player's
each
handbook
version.
too.
All right,
It'd
I
be a
wasn't saying
completely new
anything. I
edition.
wasn't saying.
Yeah, like I'm still very like I doubt that we will see a new edition of D&D anytime soon.
Well, besides that, going back,
Which
there
is
are
fine by me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's still people
sit with
working there
this
who want to
one.
make cool new stuff.
Sure.
all the new stuff.
Well, I mean, but that's always been the traditional challenge.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the different editions, approach it differently.
Yeah.
TSR, second edition, kind of approached it with, well, let's just put out a new campaign setting, and that had its own pitfalls. You know, a lot of people criticize or that release of fracturing the audience. They say that a lot of TSR's problems were because they carved up their audience into a million tiny little segments
Yeah.
and couldn't support all of that. Third edition and fourth edition, to
books.
different extents,
Splat books.
the emphasis there was lots of character choices and options and features. But then that led to a certain kind of fracturing the community. So, you know,
And 5th edition said we are not going to repeat the splat book model.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what it seems like 5th edition has focused on is adventures.
Yes.
That they will put a lot of time and effort into having at least one big adventure a year, but they have started kind of drifting away from that a little bit because they had, you know, the big adventure this year, but then Descent into Avernus came out recently.
Yes.
But the spring had Ghosts of Saltmarsh.
Which we're really enjoying for our groups, by the way.
But then there was also the Penny Arcade
Scooby-Doo.
book. There's the Rick and Morty book that's come out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, like,
That's Hasbro.
yeah, but like, you know, there's, you know, there are like I
Stranger
don't-
Things.
Yeah,
Stranger
that's-
Things.
there are,
Yeah.
there are people who have been concerned that having this many products happening at the same time, like, pulls attention away from individual ones, and maybe they
Yeah.
won't be successful.
Wendy's.
Oh yeah, the
But
Wendy's
that,
are.
yeah, but that wasn't D&D.
No, well, no, it wasn't.
Yeah. It had its
But
own
it's
separate.
part of that.
Yep.
It's because it's becoming more mainstream, more corporate. You're going to see those kinds of
Yeah.
effects
Yeah,
with
but-
branding.
So you know,
McDonald's needs to release one.
we've gone from having one big campaign a year to one big campaign a year, plus like a couple small campaigns a year.
Right.
And you know, there's also the question is, can the average gaming group even get through one campaign a year?
Right.
But you know,
Yeah.
so people say that, but then I also say like, why are you expecting every campaign, every group to buy every book?
Yeah.
Like
Not everybody buys.
figuring out where
That
that
is
balance
always
is
the
going to be.
problem with role-playing gaming from a business model.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, as much as I love it, it is one of the more difficult business models for a sustainable model.
Yeah.
Because unlike the collectible card games and the board games, all these things where you have to keep renewing and getting new things, you buy your core set, and technically that's all you need for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really hard to keep engaging. Fantasy Flight Games does it through a lot of tokens and add-ons and tangible goods at a premium. Games Workshop does it through their minis and all that. You have to keep having tangible goods. It is really challenging to keep the revenue stream going as a role-playing gaming business. That's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But you know, that's where I love D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
Like it's weird, or I think it's unfortunate perhaps from Wizards' perspective that they're not in a position to have that in-house because that would make for a reasonable natural revenue stream. But you know, I'm at the point where unless it's a book for like a thing I love, like you know, if the Planescape or Darksun came out in
Yeah.
hardcover for 5th, I would absolutely buy that physically. But almost everything else, I'm just going to buy in D&D Beyond
Yeah.
because then I just have it ready to deploy whenever I want to play. So, I mean, that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
But the number of RPG companies that have the resources to produce something like that and the audience to make it worth their time is basically Wizards.
But there's also the average price point now of things are so high.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, not to be like, I remember when,
Yeah.
but, you know, I remember when. You know, when they were doing the modules, instead of always being big campaign things, they argued that was one of the things that killed Iron Crown Enterprises. They went from releasing lots of little modules that were very affordable to they started focusing more and more on big campaign books that create a higher barrier to entry for new players,
Yeah.
take a lot more time investment. As our time becomes more finite, want to be able to pick up an adventure and be able to run through it and just be able to have fun quickly.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you don't see a whole lot of that coming from this particular line at this time.
From Wizards. I think there's
From Wizards, that's what I say. There are lots of third parties.
Yeah, but like
addressing
the
We
it.
do
ironic-
have more role-playing
do.
game news
We
to
do. Yeah.
cover.
Yes.
We
We
talk
could
about this forever.
We could
Could
argue about how
Yes.
Wizards should be releasing games
That is off
For
topic
quite a
for
long
now.
time.
I think
Yeah.
we're just
So,
asking. I don't think
yeah,
we're
we're just-
telling.
No.
So I
We're
think
telling you.
once again we have solved all problems in RPGs.
Yes.
Listen to us.
Listen
We're
to
right.
us. We know what's really needed in the
Because
gaming
we do
community.
have more role-playing game news, and this is
Oh,
sad
this is
news.
sad news. Yeah.
Yeah, Derek, I
Derek.
believe you're going to crush our souls.
Yeah.
Crush our hearts.
Kind of what I'm here for.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, Cubicle 7 put out a notice recently that they had a dispute with the terms of their contract with Sophisticated Games, who I believe has the license for kind of all the tabletop games in the Tolkien universe, which means that they will no longer be publishing The One Ring or Adventures in Middle-earth after, I think, the first half of 2020.
Yep.
Which means that the second edition of The One Ring that we had talked about, that we were excited about because it was
No.
going to be a second edition
3
that was still
months.
compatible with the first.
And
It was
they've been
kind of
working hard on it.
It was an
yeah.
interesting way to go about it. They've taken pre-orders for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That will no longer be coming out. So they're refunding those pre-orders. They're
Yep.
trying to do well by the customers there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
no,
it's disappointing because they had done such a good job with the game. It was so pretty.
Yes.
They were doing such a great job with the releases.
True to the
People
setting.
were very excited about it.
As a huge Tolkien nut.
Yeah.
And what hurts even more is that they're months away from finishing it.
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
months
And
away.
I don't blame Cubicle 7.
Yeah, it's not-
This is
it's-
licensing stuff higher up the chain, the food chain. You've got Tolkien Estate is the family, and then it used to be Tolkien Enterprises, now Middle-earth Enterprises, which is Saul Zant's company, which handles all the game and movie licensing. That was handed to Sophisticated Games. Every time there's a new media release, a la now Amazon series, Lord of the Rings series
Isn't
coming.
that still like a couple years out though?
Yes, but
Yeah.
now that is official and locked in.
Sure.
Same thing with Peter Jackson movies. The same thing happened with Iron Crown Enterprises. They were mid-license. They already had renewed the license and were good for a number of years. They then started a whole bunch of trouble, and because Iron Crown Enterprises fought, rather than saying, fine, we'll let it go, it bankrupted and wiped out the company.
Yeah. yeah.
And then Decipher did it, and Decipher didn't really care about the role-playing game. The writers did, the company didn't. They wanted the board game and card game and all those rights, because that was where the money was. And then they just did it for the 5 years, and then when the DVDs were coming out, they wanted to re-up, and they went, nope, we're not going to renew, dropped it. Nobody owned it for a while. Cubicle 7 took it up through Sophisticated Games, did a beautiful job with it.
Yeah, yeah.
We were one of the first 75 to have the game with Tolkien Moot and everything, and wonderful game. And also, when we get into it later, the therapeutic and educational aspects of
Yes.
it are powerful.
Well, so I think the important immediate thing here is you should probably mourn. But second,
Mourn.
if you are at all like a role player and you like Middle Earth, then you probably should go out and pick these up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because they're not going to be available for much longer.
And they're already, stuff that just went out of print, like Hobbit Tales, the card game and such, which was a supplement to it and such, is hundreds of dollars. Yeah, these are really good quality.
Yeah,
They're going to be
yeah.
expensive. So.
Yep. So get them now, get them fast.
But do not blame Cubicle 7.
Yeah,
I
do
don't
not.
think it's their fault at all. This
It's-
is
Trust
You
yeah.
have to make yourself, like you said just a minute ago, that there isn't always that much money in this. And
It
if they're
is.
making deals that might make you go out of business, because Cubicle 7 is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like, they've
They
got a lot of
luckily,
other
they have
stuff.
all these
Yeah.
others now with
Yeah.
Warhammer and Doctor Who and all these others. That they'll be okay as a company.
Yeah, but they have to look to that stuff and say, we're a successful business now.
Yeah.
We can't necessarily.
Well, it's also probably worth noting that Cubicle 7 being fine also means that the margins and the money that you make in RPGs is very, very small.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they had already
Publishing in
they
general.
had already invested all of the time
Yeah.
and money in producing a second edition
Yeah.
Yeah.
that will now not be released.
Big hit.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a
And
kind of
this
a
is
tough ride for their
not
company.
the first time a Tolkien role-playing game has gotten nixed. So TSR had a version in the 90s. And I don't know if you post the link or anything, but we have a whole thing on that. If you go to YouTube, type in John Ratliff, it's Ratliff, but it's Rateliff, and MERPCon in 2008. He explains the whole history up to that point of Tolkien gaming.
Nice.
And we've been part of that. And they had their own Tolkien game a complete prototype and everything.
Yeah.
And then they went, nah, the licensing's too much hassle.
It does make me think that like a really beginner's intro set that only used art from the old animated Hobbit would really be amazing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, ICE, went from 81 to 99, I think it was, on their license, and they got in a little bit of trouble when they tried to do the Choose Your Own adventure books because they were books, not modules. Just that printing format got them in trouble. They did early on, they did homages to that, but later on they moved on from there as the History of Middle-earth came out and such.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway.
All right, so next on our list, something that is near and dear to my heart. So we didn't talk about it. I wasn't here last week, unfortunately, but we didn't talk about the fact that something secret was happening because they were like, hey, there's a big secret.
I think you told us not to.
Right.
And now
Yeah,
that,
you
it's,
did tell
now that
us.
it's been revealed, I feel like maybe you had secret information and you wanted to be the one to share the truth.
Yeah, you said you
I
told
wish.
us.
Yeah.
I think we did it.
It's real coincidental that.
Yeah,
huh?
I wonder.
No, I didn't know how long it was going to take for them to announce it, but they were like, hey, it's a secret. JK, we revealed it now. So what this is Magic, a new Magic set. I'm using that in quotes because it's really not a set, but it's called Secret Lair, and it's a bunch of alternate art for individual Magic cards that are relevant to current formats. And this is pretty weird for Wizards because it's very close to them selling singles.
So they're basically selling like sets of, I think, 3 to 6 cards?
Yeah,
something like
3
that?
to 6 cards. So, they're very...
How did you get your notes so out of order?
It started, I got this double page one that
Wow.
one of the
you're
others are double
special.
pages,
Oh,
so
you got-
it
We're
threw it
just going to
off.
blame Will. We're going to blame Will.
Yeah,
Double-sided page.
Remember, he only exists sometimes. When we need to blame things, that's when you also exist. Yeah.
He's Schrodinger's scapegoat.
Yeah, it's Schrodinger's scapegoat. There you go.
So it's super exciting that you can buy these directly from Wizards, and the art on these is amazing in so many different ways. For example, the Goblin set, I guess I'll just run down all the different ones. So there's a Bitter Blossom Dreams, which is the fairy and the tokens that go along with it. Eldraine Wonderland, which is a bunch of snow-covered lands, which is very mechanically relevant for people who are playing snow-covered decks. In Modern Horizons, we've had new snow-relevant cards, so that's really cool. Restless in Peace, the Golgari theme to it. Seeing Visions, and each bundle has its own name, is a Serum Visions alt art, which is surreal and amazing, and not like any Magic art I've seen. I felt they've been pushing the boundaries, especially with Seb McKinnon's art, but this one in particular, it looks like it could be in a museum.
Yeah, but it actually feels like it's kind of a callback to some of the old, weird, surreal art Magic launched with almost.
Yeah. And then carrot brackets explosion sounds. The names of these are great.
I feel like this is straight out of Borderlands, and like Mr. Torg needs to leap
Yeah.
in here and just be like, explosion!
And so goblins, obviously. I believe there's 5 in there that are all very relevant cards to if you're doing goblins, especially like a goblin commander deck. I think for commander in particular, these cards are just like... Some people like having very consistent art in it. I think those people are
Boring.
wrong and boring. Yeah, I love just having more like cool art and different cards. These are
You love
blocky,
having
almost
cool art
cartoon.
and different cards, but you hate
Yeah.
collector's boosters?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I didn't-
Ooh.
I never said that I hated
The essential paradoxes of Emma.
I would like to see the recording of that where I said I hate collector boosters. I don't think I ever said that. I had
Will,
re-
if you could just put an edit together that makes her say
I'm
that,
pretty.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
I had reservations. Is the only thing I'm saying.
Okay.
In that you reserved some to buy them.
Well, actually, you know what? Tell us the one card that you're actually really excited about.
Wait,
for a
wait,
whale.
there's one more.
Oh, there is?
Kaleidoscope Killers.
Oh, okay.
But wait,
Which
there's
is some
more.
Eldrazi.
Yeah.
But wait, there's
There's
more.
more.
There's more.
5 color characters.
Yeah, like how reasonable is it that you're going to be able to get 5 mana in your deck? Like,
For commander.
Okay.
Like these are the
oh,
commanders.
okay, I get it.
Specifically.
It said in the
They're just-
article
got
that
it.
Yeah.
Got it.
while it is legal, that the commander groups will definitely be much more interested.
Yeah, because you can make a 5 color deck because the commander is based on the color identity. Last but not least,
Brace yourself.
Brace yourself.
We should probably just cut the commercial.
No,
Yeah,
wait, no, stay. OMG kitties.
I just want to clarify, that is the name of the set.
That is the name of the
not
set.
your expression of excitement
I mean, it's
about
both.
it.
Yeah.
It's so
with
cute.
the OMG included.
OMG kitties. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my God. Just, if you are doing nothing else, you're not doing anything right now.
No,
Except for watching the
they're
show.
watching this.
Watch the show. Make a new tab in your Chrome browser or whatever. Make a note to click on that link, kitties, or click on it and come right back, because we talk about adorability a lot on this show, mostly because of me. But I mean, this goes.
I like cute things too.
Me too.
I introduced you
Like
to the Nurglings. Yeah.
Nurglings are also cute. But these kitties, I mean, I just. So you think about the core audience of Magic the Gathering, and if you picture in your head what you think a Magic the Gathering player.
Chad.
Fine.
Uh,
But I think this is a perfect example of the fact that they could make this thing that speaks to me. And I think there's actually a lot of players in the player base who do like cute things and will
Yeah.
put this in their commander deck or
Yeah.
whatever. So
I
yes,
fully support your cat problem.
there's my cat solution.
so yes, thank you for bringing us happiness again after that
Yeah.
total letdown.
Well, so the key thing here, though, is that
Yes.
these are all alternate art versions of other cards.
Yes.
But they're also like super limited. So
Yes,
basically,
yes.
It seems like each day, starting on Monday, each day is going to have one of these available.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a bundle you can buy on Monday that includes all of them.
Yep,
But
Cyber
otherwise,
Monday.
each day is just one of these.
Yes.
It's available that day.
Yep.
Wow.
You order it that day, or it's gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Super,
That's it.
super, super special.
Super
Yeah, super,
special.
super,
yeah,
super.
so if you want this, you have to jump on that because these will be gone. I am seeing these being very hard to get a hold of on the secondary market. There's also some benefits for MTGO,
Oh, yeah,
weirdly,
that's right.
and
Yeah.
also Arena.
I thought that both of those were really, really nice to include that in a special set like
Yeah,
this.
it's interesting because I always have to wonder how much they want to support MTGO going forward. Because now that Arena is here, it's like, well, aren't you just going to make it all be Arena? But this kind of points towards, maybe they'll just keep both going.
Pardon my ignorance, MTGO.
So that's
Magic the Gathering Online.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
So if you remember
Okay.
our news last week, the week before, about how Warhammer Fantasy was coming back, like it seems more and more that companies are kind of like, sure, we have this new shiny, like modern, streamlined, accessible version, but a lot of you people like this older, more complicated one that you've learned. So cool, we'll just do both.
Yeah, why not both?
Porque no los dos.
So they're going to have the cards in MTGO. I believe that these cards are not legal, or they're not going to be in Arena, but there's going to be sleeves for the different ones in Arena.
that's a shame.
So yeah, because they're working on getting the cards there, but that's also a thing. Instead of directly putting the cards, if they fit in the format, historic, whatever. But yeah, the paper cards will be cool. There'll be some in MTGO and sleeves in Arena as well. You
And
definitely check it out.
This seems like a very good Christmassy gift.
Oh yeah,
for
I was
a
just gonna
Magic
say
fan.
that for someone who's into Magic and you know what their type is, like how cool is that saying like, here is your goblins, like oh.
I almost feel like maybe that's why Wizards did it.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
that
for
does seem-
Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday.
I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe.
Seems to launch out.
All right, and that is it for our headlines.
Now, it's main topic time, and the reason why Hawke has been here gracing us with his presence. Today, we've discussed before on how role-playing games could help and how the ways they can help rehabilitate, educational-wise, and therapy, on how these games are so beneficial to take people out of their traumatic experiences and into a format that is easier to cope with. And I think today we're going to be discussing specifically which games are recommended.
Yeah, which
And-
ones you found particularly useful?
So we break our games up into different tiers that we've found to be appropriate to different populations. So the tier 1 games are those that are appropriate to the widest audience. So it's lower risk for at-risk populations. It's okay if kids play it to a certain point. So the tier 1 games include No Thank You Evil. That's a great one, Monte Cook Games.
And if anybody's not familiar, like No Thank You Evil was a kids targeted RPG.
Yes.
But it's 5 to 105, and we use it actually to get our GMs to loosen up and get adult players to loosen up too, and get back in touch with their imaginations. And it's good for adults to play it too. It's really great because the sessions are typically only 20 to 30 minutes per
that's
game
good.
session. How many role-playing, and it is a full role-playing game experience. It's very lightweight in the rules, but not too lightweight. It's not so abstracted that you don't feel like it's really a role-playing game. It's not, an improv game or something. You have little tokens and character stats, and it is a full role-playing game. If you go through our checklist of what a role-playing game is according to the RPG model on rpgmodel.com or RPG Theory at rpgtheory.com, we have a checklist of the quintessential role-playing game, D&D 1974.
Yeah.
Tetris, not a role-playing game. All right, where do role-playing games fit on that spectrum? On all the others, hybrids and LARPs and electronic, etc.
Now I want someone to rise to that challenge and do Tetris, the role-playing game.
People have done, it's done. It's been done.
It's
But
done.
the normal Tetris version. So,
That'll be your homework.
No Thank You Evil does fit a full tabletop role-playing game experience. It is totally age appropriate for ages 5 on up. We've done it with as young as 3.5, 4 years old, depending upon their developmental. So that's developmental level on average, and it's appropriate to everybody. But most teenagers are gonna kind of go, "It's a kid's game. I'm not gonna play this." So it doesn't mean everybody will want to play it, and it doesn't hold up well for a long-term campaign. It's great for one-shots. Do it once a week or every 2 weeks. You do 2 or 3 sessions with kids, and you need to be done, because after about 45 to 60 minutes, they're wiggle bottoms. They got to move, and we actually incorporate a little bit of LARP into it. Where we talked about it in a previous session, where we get up and dance a little bit and stuff into the game. But that is definitely a tier 1 game. Appropriate for everybody. It's not going to trigger anybody. It's not going to be inappropriate content.
And
it's as safe as it gets.
And it's in small digestible
And it's in small digestible bites. It's not too expensive to get a set, so it's affordable. It's readily available. You can get PDFs. You can get hard copies. You want the hard copies because you need the cards and everything
I think
else.
they recently did a reprint on Kickstarter.
They did a second Kickstarter. We supported both. Actually, they had us on the front page of it because of how we use it in our programs, and so we supported that both times. But
I think
great program.
wasn't part of their project like donating a bunch of copies to libraries and stuff like that?
Yes, yes, yeah. Although also Game to Grow has done it with their thing too. That as they got extras on their Kickstarter, they'll donate a lot to people and stuff. So.
Do we want to say about what the benefits of that system are first, or do we
Well,
want to
the
go
main
over
thing
it?
is that it's safe and accessible to everybody as an introduction to role-playing gaming. But because it is definitely kid-focused, excuse me, it's not going to necessarily be enticing to everybody.
Yes.
But it's safe. As far as benefits for younger groups and also senior groups who might be, for example, struggling with cognitive impairment and stuff like that, it can help with re-socializing, working on basic numerical and language recall, and just the basic functions. If you're struggling with dementia and Alzheimer's, things like that, a more basic game like this may be more appropriate. Again, depends on your cognitive level. So it has all the basic elements of the benefits of a role-playing game. It's social. You have to communicate and work with each other. It's cooperative, not competitive.
Yes.
So you generally have to build some kind of consensus to some degree. Excuse me.
Feel free to use the fluid in your brain.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've been,
You're
yeah.
special.
Oh
We
yeah,
have
well, somehow
Yeah.
these special.
And the mechanics that you can use, you can spend your points to help each other out and build empathy, because you see, so some of the kids might start out, well, I'm going to go, and the weapons are not particularly bloody. They tend to be things like bubble, a gun that'll shoot big bubbles that traps them in the bubble, things like that. Soft bonker
Not very
things.
grimdark is what I'm hearing.
Right, yeah. And there are different levels of the game too. You start with the basic version. There are intermediate and advanced versions, all in the same game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can work on their developmental level. The token economy that's there lets you physically have little tokens you take away for your strength and your awesomeness and things like that.
Yeah.
But you can also spend them to help each other out.
Yeah.
And so the kids may start out like, I'm going to do my thing, but they start to realize very quickly, and remember, this is just a 30-minute session.
Yeah.
I'm better off if my friend's struggling there. I've never met this person before, but my game friend, I'm going to spend some awesome to help them out and such. You
Yeah.
see this time and time again. These kids come in, don't know each other at all, and within minutes they're helping each other out and working cooperatively because they see the other one struggling and having trouble taking out the bad guy and what have you.
Nice.
And so really remarkable how quickly that happens. A little microcosm of what happens in the more
So
advanced games.
what other systems have you found?
So, we do have D&D 5th edition on the Tier 1, mostly because it's so ubiquitous. It is the lingua franca of tabletop games.
Or the common, as you might say.
Yes. And 5th edition, there's a lot to like about it for that accessibility for a wide audience. It is expensive. The barrier to entry for expense is fairly high when you start looking at lower income families, things like that, when you're looking at 40, 60
there
bucks
are
a
the
book.
rules that are free online, but
That's the
are
basic.
those not, not robust enough for your use generally? Or?
It's a starting point. But generally also it's not physical, right? Those are PDFs, and those are okay for certain populations and not for others.
Right, exactly.
Our rule is that the game, if it's going to be in a program, it has to be at least available in physical print, and if it's PDF, so much the better for accessibility. But it must have a tangible good that they can take home, doesn't rely on internet, batteries, all these other things, because my research shows technology interferes with the immersion experience of role-playing gaming. Tabletop role-playing
that's
gaming.
interesting.
And I've tried, we talked about this a while ago, I spent years trying to optimize a role-playing game experience, and every time you bring screens into the tabletop experience, it interferes. Projections, everything. The only exception that's hit or miss is VR and AR. That's been the exception. Everything else, there's something that happens cognitively that takes you out of your imagination and takes you out of the immersion. Whether you're using it to just look up rules, whether you're just occasionally checking your text messages, and not only does it affect you, it affects everybody at the table. So, for example, one phone at the table that's being used that distracts people, on average, will lower the group, if you're on a score of 1 to 10, 10 being the awesome game, 5 being average, it will lower the game group score about a point. Just somebody using it
Now I'm
occasionally.
disappointed because you're giving fuel to the constant argument I have online where the GM is like, phones are banned at my table. And I'm just like, I guess I'm finding another table to play at.
I understand that. I understand. It's just something you have to take into account and decide if that works for you or not. For accessibility things, you got to have it, right? For certain people, literally need it in order to function. Then you got to do it. And then the person who does it, and this is their own self-report, right? They're saying how much fun did you have, how much did you enjoy it,
Sure.
and it just shows up. So it's and I have tried to figure out, because I've done like projectors for the battle mat and things like that, because that's cool. I've done the LED table thing, everything, because I love technology, and where it helps, great. But that's a whole other topic we could go into. So so D&D, it's ubiquitous, it's out there. Age appropriateness, obviously not as young as No Thank You Evil, but reading level, complexity, it is, and this I'll try not to go on this pet peeve too much, it is too high a barrier to entry for new game masters especially. It's okay for players, but for game mastering, it's way too high for an introduction. You can get the basic set, it's still too high a barrier to entry. There have only been 2 games so far that I've been able to find, one from 1983 and one this year, that's exactly the right amount for entry into role-playing gaming if you have no mentor to do it. So let's say you say, I want to try a role-playing game for my birthday or Christmas. Mom, Dad, get me this. And you get a box set that's supposed to say you've never played before and nobody around you's played, and you're going to learn. The 1983 Frank Metzer Beckme Basic D&D box set, the Red Book, was perfect for that because it took you through 2 solo adventures. You did not need anybody else to learn the basic rules. And then for GMing, in the DM's guide, and the books are tiny, it walked you through GMing your first group. It could be 1 player, just you and a friend, and walked you through your first adventure. Totally railroaded, dungeon crawl, very simple, but it follows the neuropsychology of learning principles, of learning in layers and a little bit at a time instead of having to learn everything up front. Mass learning versus differential learning. 2019 is the first time I have seen Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. Their starter set is great for players. They put you through a solo adventure that's really great, Alone Against the Flames, and they also have a campaign, Alone Against the Dark, that's excellent for that. We put Call of Cthulhu more in the tier 3 range because of its grimness and material and content. It's not appropriate for all ages.
What about the recent Ice Peak? D&D set that came out that had the solo adventure in it or the one-on-one adventure in it. Have you
Right,
explored that
they have the
yet?
one-on-one. I haven't had a chance to check that one out yet.
Because I hear pretty good stuff about it, but I don't know how much.
Generally,
it
the
will bring
player sides
the
are
player.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says to the GM, you must read all the way through this. The BECME one, you can just open it, never having you read one page to prep, and then learn as you go. You don't. It's better if you pre-read it, but you don't have to. Excuse me.
Oh no, it's okay.
So that's some of the challenges with 5th edition. Also, since they took out consequences to bad behavior, there's no longer the behavior modification. You know, there was a primitive amount with alignment system way back in 1st and 2nd edition. That's been pretty much nerfed since 3rd edition. There's no real consequence outside of story to being murder hobos.
Yeah,
Right.
I get that.
The game doesn't prevent that. Same thing with Star Wars. Star Wars used to be a tier 1 game until we found that the light side, dark side force points, they all wanted to go dark side because the dark side force features were more enticing.
I have yet to play in a Star Wars game where all the Jedi did not immediately leap to the dark side.
Yeah, and so we dropped it. Sorry. Because of the lack of behavior modification in it, and it was really encouraging in desired behavior, and because you have to interpret all of those dice in the Star Wars game that are the GM has to read it for them. If it's a first-time game, it's too slow. So barrier to entry is too high. So a really good one though is the One Ring role-playing game,
Yes.
Yeah.
and paralleling off of BECME because BECME is mostly out of print. You can get it as PDFs, but you can't get it in hard copy. BFRPG, which I stumbled across a few years ago, didn't really delve into it until more recently this year. Basic fantasy role-playing game, and that's at basicfantasy.org. 100% free as PDFs.
Okay.
And print on demand through Amazon, Lulu, and DriveThru RPG.
Oh,
Nice.
I didn't.
And the print on demand, like through Amazon, the rule book is $5.
Oh wow.
That's not
Now,
bad at
so
all.
is it based off of BRP?
It
like
is-
the Call of Cthulhu system?
No, it is D&D. It's a D20 system. It is using the 3rd edition OGL, because that was the most liberal OGL, open game license, but it's old school based. So they went back to BECME OD&D kind of. You have 4 races, 4 classes, and that's it to start. Lots of add-ons, you can add complexity later. And they just went back to simplifying. Now, they did not make races classes. They separated them. So they got rid of that kind of weirdism. They got rid of THACO. It uses the 3rd edition on up, armor class 10, add points so that it's not the inverted chart thing. So they did a few tweaks that they thought were helpful. So 100% free, OGL. Not only do they let you download the PDFs for free, they let you download the word processing file so you can edit and make your own version of your own rulebook for free.
Oh wow.
And then the print on demand is very affordable. The entire set, so you get the core rulebook and about a dozen supplements, which include adventures and equipment lists and creatures and stuff like that. $58 including shipping and handling if you have Prime, closer to 70 if you don't.
Ooh, that's pretty.
An entire set, you've got years and years of material, very active community, lots of other add-ons you can do. A great introduction to D20 at a much lighter level than 5th edition, and because they took out some of the isms from BECME in 1st edition with THACO and the races being mixed and such, an easier bridge towards 5th edition. So a much easier starting point. However, they also took out alignment. So the default version is not appropriate necessarily for at-risk populations, but fine for the general population. So it's still tier 1 okay, because it's safe that way. But Tor, I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay.
I don't know. I should tell you now, you're not surviving until the end of this show. So, enjoy what you have. We gave you the poison. When
What
you
was
came
in there?
Yeah, it's
Not
poison.
the end
No,
of it yet.
I do have lung issues. I'm sorry they're acting
Oh
up
no,
here.
it's,
So
it's all right. It's cold today, and that's
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
nice and brisk.
have lung damage and it's acting up, so I'm sorry. The One Ring role-playing game, hands down, is the most effective for the widest audience from about ages 9 on up, because it has so many built-in mechanics for behavior modification, group development, etc. So some of the examples I want to be able to, let's see, where did I put them up here? Help me get a little more focus here. You had a specific question related to that.
for the games. why is it like just out of like going on a different tangent? Why is it alignment is so important in these therapy games?
Alignment itself is not. Alignment is a pretty
consequences.
weak. Yeah, consequences are important.
So
that's the biggest thing about, for example, new school versus old school. So I'm going to try to.
Yeah, I was going to say, mention OSRs and such.
So a lot of the newer games have moral ambiguity. And certainly, which is fine for people who aren't at-risk populations.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great way to explore and expand and get towards, all sorts of different new perspectives.
So what you're saying is that Vampire probably not a great game for
That is definitely a tier 3 or 4 game. We do not use that with at-risk populations, incarcerated populations, etc. That does not go well.
No.
I'm shocked.
No.
Yeah. Some of this is pretty clear. Like Paranoia. We love Paranoia, not a tier 1 or 2 game.
Oh, yeah, no, that. Paranoia.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so you can see how the tiers kind of work here, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you're describing me as a tier 3 person now.
But you may not have started that way. Everybody started tier 1 is our assumption. So.
Yeah.
The newer games tend to soften consequences to bad choices. 5th edition, it's kind of hard to kill a character off because you get all the saves and such.
Yes.
Go back to old school, OD&D, BECME, 1st edition without house rules, and RPG without house and optional rules. You hit 0, your character's dead.
Oof. Yeah.
No saving throws, no negative hit points, etc.
But what I find it really interesting is that if you look at all of the kind of conversation that's around the kind of arc of development for RPGs, it very much is, especially as people get really invested and 5th edition gets big and you talk about how much people love the story.
Yes.
You do kind of, the natural conclusion is, it's hard to have that really immersive story for a lot of people if your character can just die at any moment.
Yeah.
So like the RPG as a storytelling product leads you to kind of one design conclusion, but RPGs as a learning tool to teach consequences wants you to kind of go in a completely different direction.
No, but they're not actually. There's certainly is that focus aspect. But what happens is people start to learn frustration tolerance better if they are at least motivated enough to keep wanting to do it. And it's going to depend on the person. Different people have different levels of grit, etc., perseverance, etc. But the good thing is making a character is also very easy. So it's easy to die, but it's easy 15 minutes to make a new character.
Yes.
Instead of 4 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And what happens is the old school characters start out barely better than a farmer. They really aren't superheroes. Whereas most of the newer games, they're already heroes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now they're going up to superhero.
Yeah.
What that does is it takes this level of accomplishment and compresses it to here. And they don't go through the hard stuff first. A lot of that's already taken care of for them. And that reduces their ability to develop frustration tolerance. So working on that term here, let's see if I can find the quote I wanted to use on that. Or an example. So this also changes how people play. When it's easy for your character to die, you're going to play more cautiously at first. If you ever do make it to like 6th level, 9th level, 12th level, 20th level, the self-esteem that is built, the feeling of accomplishment or overcoming impossible odds, the underdog attitude, that has a real powerful effect. When it was pretty easy to get there, where the group struggled and there were challenges and all of that, it's not as strong an effect, and it's faster with the old school.
Yeah.
Well, I think
because you get the feedback pairing.
You see that a lot, I think, in video games. Like I play a whole lot of Destiny, and there's definitely channels of Destiny that's just like, I need to chill out for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go on patrol. Everything's going to be easy. I'm just going to be hitting headshots all the time. Like everything is going to be great. But then the times that you really love the game are when you go in and you're like, we can't go in that room.
Exactly.
Like we've died every time we've gone in that room. We need to figure out a plan here.
Yeah.
And when
No Leroy Jenkins?
Yeah. Or like, Will and I did like a challenging thing that's supposed to be 3 people. We did it with 2 people. Like you get through that and you're like, we are on it's a completely different experience.
And that teaches a completely different paradigm. So here's a few key components about frustration tolerance. Frustration tolerance is a learned behavior that can be strengthened with mindful attention, so you need to bring attention to it. You need to be aware you're having frustration and you're trying to overcome it. We don't start being tolerant of frustrating things. Where, I want a bottle, my diaper's wet, right?
Yeah.
We have to learn and develop that.
Or we go on Twitter.
Right. And it takes time and patience.
Yeah.
It's the ability to overcome obstacles and withstand stressful events. Low frustration tolerance occurs when a goal-oriented action is delayed or thwarted, and the resulting feeling is dissatisfaction from unmet needs or unresolved conflicts. So I'm getting a little technical here, but I'm going to tie it in with some specific game examples.
All right, no worries.
The aftermath of a frustrating occurrence may lead to many emotional and affective responses. So affective is physically out here versus the internal emotional experience, such as acute stress, lasting anger, sadness, and rage.
Yes.
Those elements often mix together in a variety of proportions and constitute frustration. So just so we're on the same term here.
Twitter.
Yeah.
feel
So for many, frustration tolerance is low, and often the person with these kinds of sensory integrated problems, so autism spectrum and others, will become extremely upset when they're unable to problem solve a task or plan a sequence of events. And that's another important thing, is longitudinal thinking instead of immediate, delayed gratification instead of immediate. These are really important developmental skills that are getting softened. They're all there in role-playing games.
Yes.
But what I have found is the ones that give you more direct feedback. So the old school game, your character dies. I make another character. Okay. So since that killed our group, or killed my character, I'm going to try a different tactic. Versus if I went in 5th edition and I got beaten up pretty badly, but I didn't die. Hey, I got by. It was rough. Maybe I could have done something better, but I don't know what. And they keep blundering on. And it takes a while for the accumulation of multiple bad decisions to finally lead to a dead character or TPK. Now they have to unpack, where did we go wrong? And it may have been clear back here. And when you're trying to learn new behaviors, the closer the pairing of stimulus and response, cause and effect are, the faster an organism learns, right? So if your characters die very easily from a bad decision, it's much easier for you to go, oh, let's not do that way. Let's try something else and experiment and experiment.
When you use these games in the therapeutic environment, do you stop and try to walk the player through that, or do you
so that's a
try to
key
let
part
the
of the
player do it
therapeutic.
themselves?
Right, that's the key part of the therapeutic process compared to just a game.
Yes.
We do a game, we might talk about it and stuff, but we're not doing a processing discussion, even though it's great to do that. In a therapeutic setting, you have pre, maybe mid, and post-session discussions about what happened. What did you notice? What could you take away from this? How would you apply this in your life, etc.? What happened during the week while you were gone before we start this game that reminded you? Were you able to apply skills that you learned in your game? That's all part of the more therapeutic process.
Yes.
So here's an example from, let's see, here's the Hobgoblins. This is from BFRPG, old school. And we've only been running this a few months. We have a lot more to learn about BFRPG, but this is a good example we've seen in Beckme and elsewhere. So the group comes up to, there's a couple of sleeping goblins in a mine that the goblins took over, and everybody said, hey, go clear them out there. The dwarves want the mines back. 2 sleeping goblins sitting on the bench. They're sleeping on duty. The group is able to creep up on them in general. Most groups coming from the newer gaming will just come in and just kill the goblins.
Yes.
Some of the old school ones and some of the others that are less bloodthirsty, like inexperienced players,
Yes.
will instead maybe try to make sure the goblins can't get away and alert anything, and then go wake them up and try to have a discussion with them instead of killing them outright.
Yes.
For this particular module, and the module doesn't say this. This is what you find out by just reading the module. It's only a 3-page module.
Yes.
If you can negotiate with the goblins, that's how you succeed in this adventure. If you're just going to go in killing, it will be TPK every time. Because there are 17 goblins and 6 hobgoblins, and you're all first level players, characters.
Oh, I see that.
You cannot just slaughter them, because as soon as they get alerted, you might take out the first 2, no problem. Then later you got a worm to deal with, and then you go here, and then the doors, and you have 15 goblins who are enslaved by 6 hobgoblins, and the hobgoblins are higher level, 2nd, 3rd, 4th level. They've got magic, they've got all these things you don't have. It's going to be just about impossible for a group to just kill them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to go through a whole cognitive process to figure it out. But most players coming in aren't going to know that if they're actually experienced players.
Yeah.
New players don't know what to do, so they'll experiment in different ways.
I like talking to things.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
because I run games for kids a lot. The number of times that I've been like, I mean, I'm not sure if you want to do that because the next room has got a whole lot of people in it, and they're like, yeah, we got it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in this one, if they interview the 2 sleeping goblins or one of them, because they'll immediately surrender if they handle it properly.
Yeah.
They'll say they're being bullied and controlled by these hobgoblins, and they'd love to not be. Now, these are still goblins. They're still not good guys. They will stab you in the back, whatever, if you're not careful. But they are in an enslaved situation, basically, under these hobgoblins. They're being bullied.
Yes.
And they are willing to work with the other goblins to do an uprising. So that's one way to handle is do an uprising and overthrow the evil hobgob overlords. And then the goblins are your friends, and you've got the mine, and now you have to figure out what you're going to do. If you're going to enslave them or work a commission deal, co-op, or what are you going to do?
Yeah.
The other option is that you could get them to talk to the hobgobs and say, hey, we want to make a business deal. So these are just a few creative ways to solve this.
Yeah.
But if you just go in and try to fight, you're going to find out very quickly that fighting is not the answer.
No. Yeah.
Now, that is a story-driven solution. That is not
Yeah.
a mechanics-driven thing. However, you're getting the feedback because the simplicity of the game, letting your characters die so quickly, tells you through feedback very quickly, oh, this is not the right way to handle this. We need to try a different approach.
Yes.
All right. So now, before we move on to other topics,
Yeah.
you just mentioned that that kind of module is designed to kind of demonstrate that maybe fighting is not the answer. I think there was the Doctor Who system you would also mention was one that you
So that's
used
where
a lot
mechanics-
because of the same kind of
Yes.
idea. Do you
Both
want to talk about
Tor
that briefly?
and Doctor Who Adventures in Time and Space encourage you to not just do gratuitous violence because of the mechanics. So it's not story-driven. That's what's great about it. So Doctor Who has story points, and your initiative is determined by your choice of action. So when you declare your action, the most violent action goes last in initiative.
Yes.
The least violent, talking, goes first. To do a violent action usually costs you story points, and whereas the others may gain you story points. To advance your character,
That does sound very Doctor Who. in that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
totally
There's
appropriate.
always a chance to just
Yes.
go on and talk before anybody gets shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that right there is teaching that. Now, it doesn't have a lot of the other behavior mods, unfortunately, but as a lightweight game, that's pretty good. Tor has these great modifiers for empathy
Yes.
because of fellowship focus. So you pick a fellowship focus of another character, so Legolas and Gimli and Pippin and Merry, etc., that when bad things happen to that other PC, your character runs at penalties.
Yes.
It is a mechanical representation of empathy, and when we're under distress and worried about somebody, we tend to perform more poorly. It's a fake it till you make it type thing. So people who don't have empathy have to put up with this, and we have people who don't really understand, why do I have to put up with this? I don't care if something happens to them. Well, generally people do if they're close to somebody that emulates it.
Yeah.
And you do.
Exactly.
You
This is a
and
pretend
then-
game, so this is one of the rules.
Your character cares.
Exactly. And they learn, and over time, it becomes a fake it till you make it thing. They start to actually care. At first, it's just because of the game.
Yeah.
But over time, there's a reinforcement of behavior. The group has various types of points in a pool, a fellowship pool and such, that you can pull from if your hope points are getting low. But you have to get at least half the group to say yes.
Yes.
Or you can go ahead and take it without permission and gain a shadow point. Because I want it, my precious. Right? There's the whole hope point system. As hope dwindles, and the book talks about it, it's an ever dwindling supply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can turn to your fellowship focus, and if they're doing well and such, they can inspire each other and help feel better.
Okay.
Right. So there's all of that, and then the group. So you get the benefit of the group. You get the benefit of the caring about others. There's a whole long list of benefits in Tor.
Have you looked at the Adventures in Middle Earth?
Right.
The D&D 5th.
Yes,
version
we
of it?
played that since the moment it came
How
out.
many of those kinds of unique mechanics are brought over? Because
So
I think when I
yes,
looked at
it's
it,
bits and pieces.
Yeah, when I looked at it, it seemed mainly the logistical elements
The
of it,
travel
like the
focus.
overland travel,
Yeah.
Which is a
that
great,
kind of stuff.
yeah, and that's another great mechanic. Both Tor and AIM is the planning ahead, right? This is a great feature that they spell out for you that a lot of other role-playing games don't do. So you have, your fellowship phase, which is where you build community and connection. You have your adventuring phase, and you're planning it all out. Then you have, your actual contact and everything. So your travel phase, etc. So AIM does not bring over the fellowship focus. We house rule that over automatically. We do it with inspiration instead of hero points.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's available as a PDF on our website. They don't have since they don't have the hope points and such, a lot of that mechanic's gone, and so it does make a difference. It's still a step up from D&D because you have shadow points.
Yeah.
Yes.
So bad behavior means you accumulate shadow, you become miserable, you become weary, you lose control of your character temporarily, you pull what I call pulling a Boromir.
Right.
Yeah.
If you go too far down the shadow path,
I don't know, sounds kind of fun.
the GM takes over the character temporarily. And if you get too many shadow, eventually you lose your character.
Yeah.
What's really, really important about both Tor, especially Tor, but also AIM, is they represent the experience of trauma.
Yeah.
This is not a lot of games do that. And the accumulative effect of trauma. It used to be thought with PTSD and stuff, there were just strong people and weak people. And if you just were exposed to enough bad stuff, you'd get tough, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And they found out that's not right.
Nope.
You can train to have better tolerance for traumatic environments and not develop PTSD through training. That is a thing. But the more you're exposed to traumatic events, the greater your risk of developing PTSD. And PTSD is a long-term reaction to traumatic events. There's a normal response to trauma, and then there's the PTSD duration.
Yeah.
So Tor, especially, AIM to a lesser degree, takes all this into account because of Tolkien's writing. Tolkien
Yes.
went through World War I, which was
Yeah.
horrific, and that is in his writing. And so you need these sanctuaries as places to go and recover. Self-care is a key part of the game, besides just hit points and everything else. We're talking about mental health self-care
Yeah.
and relationship caring
Yeah.
is a key part of the game. You just don't see that often really spelled out. And this really helps people who don't understand these things.
Another one that actually occurs to me, you might want to check out in the Tier 3 Call of Cthulhu category is Delta Green.
Oh, yeah.
Because
yeah.
Delta Green
yeah.
is a really interesting mechanic where if I recall, it's been a little while since I read the book, but you don't have experience points. You just during downtime, you can decide what your character does. And if you decide I get better at violence, then your human relationships all decay a little bit.
Yes.
And those human relationships are a real key factor in you regaining sanity in between adventures.
Okay.
It's a really interesting kind of what do you value?
What do you value?
Yeah, and so these sanctuaries, you go and you get rid of some of your shadow points. However, sometimes some of them stick.
Yeah.
And some people complained about this with Tor is that your characters, if they don't get killed, have to retire early because they accumulate so much shadow they can't adventure anymore. They experience too much trauma to keep adventuring. And that's shown with Tolkien's writing with Frodo being taken over from the Grey Havens to Valinor because he'd been through so much. Sam had a more, instead of splatting, he had a better resilience, and it didn't, he hadn't been stabbed, first of all, by the Nazgul blade. So that was a factor. And he hadn't worn the ring for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a factor. So Sam was able to bounce back and because he'd been through much of it together. But Frodo was too much. And so the only thing they could do for him is take him to Valinor. I still have not found anything and there's a lot of other parts we go into, but we don't have time.
Yeah.
But that gives you some of the key parts. And I hope that helps with some specific examples in the game.
Oh, yeah, it
And
does.
working with a lot of mental health issues, with trauma, with people who are struggling to make relationships, and how to develop relationships. This game spells it out. It tells you how to do an audience, and if you're being too haughty, the lore master penalizes your role and explains, well, your character's being really arrogant and not polite to this important person here.
Yeah.
That's going to make it not go as well, and it really helps people learn these skills in a defined way.
So
we should probably move on.
Yeah, I was about to say, just to wrap it up, the systems that you kind of found particularly useful were the One Ring, No Thank You Evil, Doctor Who Adventures in Time and Space, and Basic Fantasy Roleplay.
Yeah, at this point, that's where we're having, that's in. And BFRPG, we're looking at kind of having to create our own tweaked version now with the One Ring going away. A lot of adding corruption and trauma and things like that to try to see if we
sounds
can
like it's
emulate that.
with the open source kind of nature of it.
We have that option.
Sounds like it's the perfect place for you to give a new home to those mechanics.
Now, I will say for fans of Tolkien gaming, there is Other Minds magazine still around. There was Other Hands magazine, and then now there's Other Minds magazine. I was the founder of it in 2005. And it does Tolkien gaming for all systems, including Tor and other content, so that hopefully will still be allowed to keep going. It's a free zine with great artwork and everything, and so that's at other-minds.net for those who want to be able to keep getting that kind of content.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, we only have a few minutes to run through this, so we're going to have to be fast, friends.
All right,
okay?
yes,
So
we're gonna
on to
be
bundles.
Bundle Boss.
And
I'm
Banzai
Christian.
is bundling us.
I got stuff to tell you. Not riffs,
Is
but
that-
I missed riffs.
Is that how he acts?
Christian.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sure. That's.
Yeah.
He does.
Nailed
He's
it.
very gesture. Yeah.
He's a very straight shooting, rootin' tootin' cowboy.
But yeah, for the Humble Bundle that they're offering is the Orcus 5th Edition Holiday Hoard, which is basically a bunch of 5th Edition books and other like
$475 worth.
$475 worth of books that you can get for $18. Oh my gosh! So
It's a deal.
if you're interested in Orcus, the demon prince of the undead, there is also included in this is How Orcus Stole Christmas, which is a low-level Christmas-themed adventure.
Does his heart grow 3 sizes?
It grows so
Oh,
big
no,
that he
not
dies
again.
and then undies again.
And, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
symptomatic.
that seems like I'm pretty sure I didn't play this companion, but I'm pretty sure that's how it goes.
And what is the charity that's been?
The charity is the Navy Marine Corp Relief Relief Society, which provides financial aid, educational aid, and other basic assistant needs for retired sailors, Marines, and surviving relatives.
And active duty.
And active
their
duty.
family.
Yeah, and their family.
Yeah.
So this is really beneficial for a lot of people who do get out of the military. I'm coming from a family of military people.
Yeah.
They really do need that help, especially those whose like either husband or wife has died in the line of duty, and so it helps provide for those people. The next bundle that we're going to be going on is the Indie Cornucopia 7. Cornucopia.
Everything.
So
Are we all doing a hand?
Cornucopia.
It's like that's the physical gesture for cornucopia.
Cornucopia. Yes.
I just
But-
thought it would have been like, blah.
That's fair.
But it's like a spiral of
Yeah.
food, so.
Sure.
But for this one, if you're into any indie like tabletop role-playing games, this is the bundle for you. For the first starter collection of this bundle is $12.95, and it gets you 5 Torches Deep, Sigmata, and Bubblegum Shoe.
Yep, bubblegum shoe.
Bubblegum Shoe.
And like 5 Torches Deep is it was on Kickstarter not too long ago, and it's trying to emulate some of the kind of old school,
Old
like
school.
dungeon crawliness of
Okay.
it, but in a very like indie rules light way.
And then, also you can upgrade for $26 for the bonus collection, which includes Blades in the Dark, Kids on Bikes, Las Vegas, and Imp of Preserve.
Perverse.
The Perverse,
Imp of
sorry.
the Perverse. Yeah. So 5 Torches Deep is like a very classic dungeon crawly kind of experience.
Yes.
Sigmata, the tagline is "This signal kills fascists," so it's supposed to be like a revolutionary
Revolution
game.
game. and
Bubblegum
stuff.
Shoe is based on the Gumshoe system, but it's a teenage detective thing like Hardy Boys, Nancy Brew type.
And then same thing, Kids on Bikes.
Yep. And then
Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew mystery.
Yeah.
And then Blades in the Dark is the current indie darling of you're playing criminals kind of who are part of a gang.
Yes.
And you're trying to carve out territory for yourself in a surreal Victorian post-apocalyptic city kind of thing.
Yes.
Kids on Bikes.
Kids
It's
on Bikes.
very lightweight, lots of fun system. It's 1980s. I mean, Stranger Things and
played that, right?
Goonies.
I haven't played. I've read through most of the
Okay.
book.
Yeah,
but
very
I
much
haven't played
Goonies,
it.
E.T.,
Yeah.
Stranger Things type feel to it. A lot of fun, very, very lightweight.
And then Las Vegas is like a modern surrealism, modern magic kind of thing, where it's like tarot based. It's Tim Powers novels,
Okay.
like Last Call, stuff like that. I believe you are people in Vegas who kind of have magical powers, like subtly, and you're trying to kind of recover your memory and your identity as you're losing it in the Sin City, basically.
Okay.
And then Imp of the Perverse, if I remember correctly, is you're playing people who have these imps that are urging you to do horrible things.
Yes.
Do the bad thing. Don't do the bad. Do the bad
Definitely
thing.
do the bad thing.
This benefits
Weather's
the
dripping,
Dots
weather's
RPG project.
Yes.
Which
yes.
you are familiar
Yeah.
with.
I'm actually, full disclosure, I am a member of the board of directors for Dots RPG and helped them with putting their nonprofit together when they were struggling because, stuff happened.
Yeah.
So they announced recently partnership with Wizards of the Coast with D&D. They have successfully translated the 5th edition Player's Handbook into Braille, which is an awesome achievement. Now they're trying to figure out with Hasbro and everything, well, what kind of distribution rights do we have with that? But very promising. That is a huge milestone for accessibility in gaming. They've been handing out for years now through the prior owner and now through this group. Basically, if you donate to them, that money pays for them to do the printing. They do 3D printing of these Braille dice. And they give them away to anybody who asks for them.
Yes.
Whether you're a school, a library, an individual, and you need Braille dice so you can have people participate, that's what your donations are paying for them to do that.
Nice.
And they include cards that teach you to read Braille. So they're more than just Braille. It's all about accessibility. So they and RPGResearch are also partnered with ASL RPG, which is creating American Sign Language signs to do role-playing gaming. Because D&D has a lot of its own words.
Yeah.
And you have to finger spell everything. It's really slow.
Yeah.
So to speed up the game.
Dragon.
So to speed up the game. And it's all at aslrpg.com, and it's all part of that. You can help donate, either through Patreon for Dots RPG or directly, but also go to Amazon Smile. So go to smile.amazon.com.
Smile.
You have to do it through the website.
Yeah.
App won't work, and you have to always remember smile.amazon.com. You pick them as your charity, and then a small percentage, doesn't cost you anything extra, will be donated automatically to them.
And they also have a panel at PAX Unplugged.
Yes.
Right, coming up on the 8th.
December 8th.
All right, let's head on to Kickstarter.
Kickstarter's
Kickstarter
a queen.
You look at me and you wave your hands at me.
Oh yeah, but it's me. Oh, sorry.
Well, the first one. And
First
you're the
one.
queen.
Yeah. No, but you're the queen.
Yeah.
You're just praising the queen. Okay, but for 1 day's left on our Kickstarter train that we're going through right now, the Mystic Lilies is a rules-light tabletop RPG game that focuses on vengeful wishes and dark manipulations. It's definitely, if you're into very social, competitive, like it's not fighting, it's haha, how dare you score me, did you
Exciting
hear?
high drama.
Right.
High drama.
But also drama between the characters, right?
Yes.
That's what seemed cool to me. I want to fight with my party, right? Like, I don't want to go in there. What are you going to do about it? Or like we have like a backstory and we have an argument.
Any anime fan, this is Monaco Magica.
Yes,
the
Monaco
RPG.
Magica, the RPG.
So which is basically like taking the trope of the magical schoolgirl, like who's going on witch adventures, layered on top of a whole bunch of weird dark trauma and interpersonal conflict.
And they use card mechanics instead of dice. And so if you like really want to go ahead and experience that social conflict and basically being able to like fight with your own teammates, this is the game for you. It's got 1 day left, Mystic Lilies.
All right, next up on our list is Button Shy Wallet Games reprint campaign. This is exciting because this is the first reprint that they have done.
Well, what is a Button Shy Wallet game?
What is a Button Shy Wallet game? I feel every time I have to explain this, I'm like, how do you not know? This is such a cool concept. 18 cards in the game. They come in a wallet, so it's a little plastic.
It's a micro game like people have probably played Love Letter.
Yes.
It's that same kind of idea, but it's just packaged
smaller
in a little...
and even more compact. It's so compact, you literally like slide it into your back pocket or into just a little pocket on your backpack or something. Totally easy to carry around. And what's so cool about the company Button Shy and Jason Tagmeyer is the variety of gameplay that you can create. You think, 18 cards, what can you do with it? So much from I played dexterity games to social deduction games to tile-laying games, storytelling games. So there's just so many options of gameplay. Pretty much whatever you're into, you'll be able to find something.
I do love how Love Letter like kicked open the door of,
Yes.
you can do an amazing game with 18 cards or fewer.
Yes.
So some of the games included are Mint Julep, Pentaquark, Cunning Folk, and Banned Books. Go out to the Kickstarter to check out all the different games they have available. There's 1 day left on this one. And the games are super fun, and there's something for everyone.
Yes.
All right.
No, you're still going.
Yeah, Darwin's Choice. I mean, all you need to know about this is you're making cool Franken creatures with the cards, and they look awesome, and they have tentacles and tails
Yes.
and weird heads.
Dr. Moreau's Island.
Yes,
Definitely
there's-
just Darwin like spinning in his grave. Like, that's not how evolution works.
Oh, you're seeing this? I was thinking Darwin spinning the wheel.
Oh,
for
yeah, that too.
randomness.
That's not how
Like-
evolution works.
Yeah, so Derek's issue with this game is it wasn't very realistic. Fine, but it's funny and it has some interesting mechanics for whether someone survives, a creature survives in a certain environment. You can move environments with expansion.
Yeah.
There's prehistoric, and you get cities in there, so some will just eat waste.
Yeah, well, so there was a Kickstarter project for the game previously,
Yeah.
and that was very successful. But I don't think the game is widely available.
Yeah.
So this new Kickstarter covers 2 expansions and puts the game back out there, so
Yep.
people can back it to get the game. There's
Yes.
the expansion that you mentioned that adds like humans messing up the environment as
Yeah.
another factor, but it also allows you to kind of pull prehistoric creatures into the mix. And then the other like expansion that I thought was kind of a really neat way to go about it was not a gameplay expansion. It's a companion book that's an encyclopedia of all of the animals whose parts were featured in the game.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a cool option. The other cool thing about this is it's made from sustainable wood and has very little plastic and is carbon neutral. So we
Yes.
talked about environmental games on here before and said, well, it's environmental, but it's also hurting the environment. So they're very aware of this.
Yes.
This game has 5 days left, so you should check it out on Kickstarter.
And you said there's another one out as well as the second Darwin game.
Oh yeah. So another we're not going to dive into, but there's another Darwin game out this week.
There.
So apparently, if you're a Darwin fan,
Yeah,
it
evolution
is
for
your
everyone.
week.
Well, and I want to
to
see if one of them survives
Well,
to
one
of them-
grow on, and,
One of
or
them
they
we
both
included,
terminate.
the other we did not. So
Yeah.
clearly,
We'll see.
evolution
see.
force. All right. So the next Kickstarter we have 6 days left is Medici the dice game, and this one I was kind of surprised to get because it's a Rainier Knizia game, and last I checked, it's only at 20 grand, which is a little surprising to me. Medici's a pretty well-known game brand.
Yeah.
You know, Knizia is one of the most well-known game designers. So it's odd that it's not blowing up more. So this is a dice game,
Yeah.
Yes.
but looking at the components, it really feels like it's basically a roll and write. Because you're rolling these dice, you're getting resources.
okay.
You have a score sheet. You're writing down on the score sheet what resources you get. It's not a roll and write in the sense that you're building a house or you're building a route or you're kind of building a kingdom, but you're just kind of marking off on your sheet and you're trying to after 3 rounds, you want to get the best collection of resources to sell.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's a roll and write in all but name.
Yeah.
Which is
Okay.
weird because there's also another roll and write you can do as an add-on that they do call a roll and write.
Right.
Ah.
And then
But-
roll and write is a tough audience. I love roll and writes. I know a lot of people who do, but I also know people who just don't like them. You don't like them.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, there's a very split, and especially the Medici audience is not necessarily the roll and write
I don't
audience.
know.
Yeah.
It just seems surprising.
Yeah.
But if you are a fan of roll and writes,
Yeah.
Reina
Yeah.
Knizia, the Medici games, because this is the 3rd one in the series.
And there-
Yeah.
Sign language 3.
3.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Another one to check out. 6 days left is Mummy the Curse 2nd edition.
Curse.
And this is I think noteworthy because this is the 2nd edition of Mummy the Curse, which was the first game that Onyx Path put on Kickstarter.
Yes.
And anybody who's not in the know, Onyx Path is the company that picked up the Chronicles of Darkness,
Slash World of
which was the
Darkness.
new World of Darkness. So they are responsible for bringing a lot of that kind of World of Darkness stuff to Kickstarter and kind of reinvigorating it.
And are they part of the controversy of the latest version?
No,
of
that was
the previous.
White Wolf.
Yeah.
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 There's a complicated thing there.
Yeah.
Onyx Path is working in partnership with Modifius
Okay.
now.
Okay.
They are producing Chicago by Night, which was a Kickstarter they did, but that was separate from the core book and
Okay.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This is Chronicles of Darkness, not World of Darkness or New World of Darkness, or anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're basically playing a mummy.
Yeah.
You're playing
Yeah. Great.
a guardian that an ancient civilization made effectively immortal to protect its artifacts.
Yes.
So you wake up when they're in danger, you go deal with the situation, and you go back to sleep.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
Works out.
Banzai, you're up.
Next is Zone Out. If you're into city builder games that are pretty simple, fast, easy to learn games, 6 days left. Zoned Out. It's a 2 to 4 player game that, unlike a lot of city builders like Machikoro, where you have separate cities you're building, this is all one continuous city that you're building, and then your plans might not align with other people, so you kind of fight for zones, and like there's like rundown areas that you need to improvise, or like
You have to have like a city council meeting.
you have to have a
rezone
council,
neighborhood.
rezone neighborhoods and such, and so
Yeah.
you're trying to like
Thrilling.
actively
Multiplayer SimCity.
Yeah, multiplayer SimCity essentially
Perfect, I
is
love
what
it.
it is. And if that's a game for you, Zoned Out, 6 days left.
I'm gonna jump right to Small Samurai Empires. Here.
yes.
Well, unless you
No, it's
don't-
fine.
Yeah?
It's fine. It's fine. Just
didn't-
get rid of games that I like. That's cool.
Oh,
Go ahead.
We
Yeah.
didn't talk about that. Did you want to talk about
Yeah, it's fine.
All right.
it? Okay. Small Samurai Empires.
Yes.
It's totally not FFG's Telling Game Samurai.
No, it
Very
isn't.
similar.
It's very similar looking, and so I think that's what they're trying to evoke when you first see it. I'm like, wait a second, isn't this
Yeah.
game? But it's not. It's different.
Samurai are just popular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
samurais are just popular.
Everyone's
so.
into it.
It's an action programming game. So you kind of just lay out your cards of what you're going to do and then flip them up as you go.
So you're playing, daimyo who are trying to take over territory in Japan.
Yes.
And the way that you move your army is you program your actions, and then you all kind of reveal them at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's 2 to 4 players. And it's a very interesting game if you want to go ahead and have like a pocket version. It's definitely one of those like mini games
Like
that you
like
can.
the Tiny Epic.
Yeah.
Tiny Epic
The Tiny
type of
Epic blank series of games.
Yes.
If you want that kind of complex, hardcore gamer kind of experience
Yes.
in a much more portable package.
That's what this game is. So 6 days left. Yeah.
7 days left.
7 days left.
It'll end on Friday,
small-
just before our next
Yeah.
show.
Yes, Friday. So small empires, samurai empires.
Small
And
samurais.
that.
They're not actually small samurais. They're just,
No. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it for our show today. Stay tuned for new release rundown with you, I guess, and someone else.
Will will be joining us.
Will will be joining us from behind the
Seeing
camera.
as how it's Black Friday, a lot of the stores.
Stores were not like,
Yeah.
I'm going to
What?
give up.
Oh
the
my
plane.
God.
Multiple stores were like, yeah, we'll totally send someone out. And I was like, I just want to remind you, it's Black Friday. They're like, no, we will not be sending
No,
someone out.
anybody.
No,
No.
I was
I
like,
regret
that's what I
everything.
thought. I just wanted to check.
All right, so we will be talking about games here. It is Black Friday, so you can see the games on the show and then run right out and buy them at all your local game stores.
Yes.
Mondays, we have Brothers Murph Gaming, so you should check that out. We also have Fireside with Peter Atkinson on Wednesdays, and we're here every Friday morning at 11 a.m.
Yep, sounds
PST.
good.
Sounds like a good time. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever you want.
All that
and we
stuff.
will be back next week.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
See
Stick
ya.
around.